Good afternoon from California carnivores. It's a winter day in here, which if you know me well, you know I don't like all that much. The days are short. It's dark by like 4 o'clock here, and it's hard to get a lot done in the nursery, which I don't like because I like to get a lot done. And it's also pretty cold if the sun doesn't come out. It doesn't warm up in here, and so it's not plant cold, so it's not freezing, but 50 degrees all day long in here can still be a little bit rough. And most carnivorous plants, the temperate ones anyways, they go dormant in the winter time. So some of you are just figuring that out now. If you got into carnivorous plants this spring and you bought a whole bunch of American pitcher plants and some Venus flytraps, and all of a sudden they're starting to look kind of terrible. You can see my amazing American pitcher plant collection back here. It's looking pretty rough and it's not much to show off to your friends. So one of the ways I survive this phenomenon is the winter growing sundews, or tuberous sundews. This has been a long obsession of mine. Those of you guys probably know I've been growing carnivorous plants since I was 11 years old. I still have all my same plants when I was a little boy. And pretty quickly I found out about things like Cape sundews, which were easy to get back then, threadleaf sundews, forkleaf sundews. But in the early 90s, it was pretty much impossible to even see one of these tuberous sundews. Peter had a few really beautiful examples of like Drastra gigantea and stolonifera and some other ones I'll show you in a second here, even way back then. So I was lucky enough to be able to go to California carnivores all the time when I was a kid and volunteer, and so I was able to see them, a few of them, but there's there's a lot of different species, probably 70, 80 different species. And this is pre-internet. I mean, the internet existed, but you couldn't just Google search every single plant you wanted to see. And so most of these were like mythical creatures to me of the botanical world. I knew they existed in some far-flung land. I was so obsessed with them, but I never, thought I'd actually get to see so many. And I'd be very pleased, the little kid inside me would be very pleased to know that I have all these now. Anyways, enough about me. So the tuberous sundews, they're growing in the winter time, and that's because they're native to Western Australia, mostly Western Australia. They also grow in Australia. There's even a couple outliers like Drastra lunata, grows in Japan, I think even in India. It's a few outliers, but mostly Western Australia, where the climate is almost identical to California. We have these dry, hot summers where it doesn't rain at all. It'll be like 100 degrees and the ground just cooks. And then we have mild, wet winters that I was just bitching about a second ago, where it's rainy and it definitely, as cold as we'll ever get here is like 15, more reliably 20, 25 degrees Fahrenheit. Sorry for the Fahrenheit, it's the US. Still haven't learned my Celsius that well, but you can convert it. Anyways, it doesn't get that cold. In Australia, where they grow, it gets just the edge of freezing, but it doesn't freeze, and that's really important, and that's what makes them a little tricky to grow. They need cooler weather, but they don't want to freeze. So cool greenhouse is a good place to grow them. You can grow them in terrariums under lights with a few tricks. But mostly, if you're going to get cold outside, you can't just grow these outside like the rest of the temperate sundews. So they're a little tricky to grow, not for beginners. I've been doing it a long time, like I said, so I've amassed a lot of them. And basically, I just wanted to teach you a little bit about them, but also just show them off. So one of the things that makes them so great is that, sundews are really super diverse. I always say that, if you can imagine that kind of plant, it almost exists in a sundew form. There's paddle-shaped leaves and rosetted ones, but the tuberous sundews have the most diversity, I would say. They look really, really different. The first ones I'll talk about are the rosetted ones. You guys know that lots of different sundews come in rosettes. So I have some here that are easy to look at. This is Drastra Arithmariza, which they actually in Australia call the ink sundew, because believe it or not, a long time ago they would grind up the tubers to make ink, which is kind of hard to believe. But they have these really beautiful, usually 4-leaf rosettes, simple like that. It used to have several different subspecies which have been elevated to species level. One of them, this used to be Arithmariza subspecies squamosa, and now it's just squamosa. But this is one of the best of all the tuberous sundews. You don't really have to be a genius to see why. They have these amazing big fleshy rosettes, and that red margin just makes them so beautiful. They're also just really extra dewy. Tuberous sundews are really, really dewy. And they're diverse, so almost every squamosa looks a little bit different. Another just basic one is 2x Stylus. If you're looking for an easy one to start off with, this is a big community pot of 2x Stylus. Every single one of these little rosettes is a little tuber underneath the soil. So they're actually technically botanically a corm. We don't need the correction messages. We'll take them. They're usually like orange or white or red, and they can be very small. Even a sundew like that size, the corm or the tuber is probably, you know, like a grain of rice. So if you order one from us, don't go digging for it. You probably won't find it, and you'll just disturb the whole thing. If you want to find it, pro tip, get yourself a soil sifter and soil it all, sift it all out, and you can find it. Sometimes the tuber is covered in a papery sheath that makes it look brown, and if you took that off, it'd be orange underneath, just like garlic looks different when you take the sheath off. So it won't be orange necessarily. Don't go digging around in it. You'll probably just squish it or lose it. The only time to go looking for those is when they're dormant in the summer, and just sift it and find it. You can transplant them when they're growing, but they're so sensitive that they'll usually go dormant right away. Another really beautiful, Drastra macrophylla. I almost forgot about Drastra macrophylla. How can I forget? This one can get really big. Macrophylla means big leaf. This one's many, many years old. I think this one's at least 10, 15 years old, but it's still not as big as they could get. They could get maybe twice again this big across. They'll just make tons and tons of flowers. This is the first scape. They have multiple flowers on a single scape, and they'll just flower and flower and flower. Little white flowers, and they're also really sweetly fragrant. Almost all the tuberous sundews have fragrant flowers, and there's no smell-o-vision yet. Why not? Why haven't we invented that yet? But they're so wonderful to smell. It's one of my favorite little smells. So I feel so special every time I smell it, because I know like almost nobody gets to smell a tuberous sundew flower. They smell like gardenias or jasmine, like that really sweet, perfumey, nice smell. Another one is Drastra Lowry Eye. And here's some really beautiful ones in here. They just like their leaves just shingle on top of each other to make little sundew mandalas in the sand like that. I mean, words can't really describe how beautiful they are. They're just so pretty. That's their full size for those. But Lowry Eye also comes in a giant form, which I have over here. You can see it's maybe 2 or 3 times bigger. But it's basically still the same form. For you sundew nerds at home, probably have heard maybe or figured out that that's actually probably a hybrid origin, which makes it giant. It doesn't make seeds. When I first tried to grow these years ago, I tried to cross them to make seeds, and it never ever does. So that means it's probably a hybrid, because hybrids are sterile, like a mule is sterile.